More than a decade separated Carmen Montelongo and Sam Wiggins, but that didn't seem to matter.
He really felt that this was a person that he had connected with.
He said, we laugh, we have fun.
But then, after more than 2 years together,
I called his house and I left a message. Sam, I haven't seen you in a few days.
Something's not right.
Police would soon uncover a crime almost too sickening to contemplate.
She's carrying a trash can that body's in it.
Some of the parts were sawn off.
Others had been hidden in flower pots.
She gave away those flower pots as gifts.
Samuel Wiggins certainly didn't deserve to die like that.
And the reason for his murder was something only Carmen could explain.
I will tell you the entire truth.
Ontario, California, May 29, 2011. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon in this middle-class suburb 35 miles east of Los Angeles, part of Southern California's sprawling Inland Empire region.
Inland Empire is known for just being kind of outside of the main city area where people kind of live and then they commute into LA for work.
But that sleepy suburban calm would be shattered when 18-year-old Matthew Bell dialed 911.
911, what's your emergency?
I'd like to report a murder.
At least he thought it was a murder. His cousin, 51-year-old Carmen Montelongo, had just turned up at the house he rented in an obvious panic.
Around 12 o'clock, me, my little brother, and my ex-girlfriend at the time, we were in the living room. She kind of just walked in like frantic.
And according to Matthew, she was frantic to dig up something buried in the backyard. Extremely frantic.
She's like, "Can you guys help me? I'll give you guys $5,000 each."
Matthew and his brother had initially taken Carmen up on her offer, but had just as quickly backed out once she dug down and reached whatever was wrapped in a trash bag at the bottom of the hole.
Bag ripped, and the smell and everything, it just slapped me like hard.
Matthew said that he was gagging and throwing up. He ended up leaving.
And that's when he called the police.
It smells like unbearable.
Couldn't get away from it. It was like surrounding the whole block.
The smell wasn't all he couldn't get away from either. Matthew told the police that at that moment, he, his brother, and his girlfriend were all walking away from the house, and that Carmen was following them.
She's like, "Come here, come here."
Asking them to come back and help her.
I'm like, "No, I don't want to come. I don't want nothing to do with that."
And according to Matthew, Carmen wasn't chasing after them empty-handed.
She was pulling this wheeled trash can down the street.
She's carrying a trash can that body's in it.
Born in 1959, Carmen Montelongo grew up in Los Angeles, part of a large immigrant family.
The family of Carmen Montelongo comes from a town in Mexico. She has several half-siblings. She has several cousins.
Although by her mid-20s, Carmen was married with a family of her own.
She has a boy and a girl.
The marriage didn't last, though. And by her 30s, Carmen was on her own, struggling to raise 2 kids alone.
She worked for the AAA in Riverside, California.
But just like her marriage, that didn't last either.
She was eventually laid off from that job.
So Carmen went to work for herself.
She worked as a consultant.
That was a fancy way of putting it. In reality, she lived on the margins of LA's underground economy, using her social skills to help recent immigrants from Mexico navigate life in their new home.
If someone was looking for a tenant, she would help the landlord find it. If someone was looking for a place to stay, she would help them find it. And she would pick up commissions or a finder's fee from that. And apparently, that's how she lived.
It wasn't exactly glamorous, but Carmen appeared to be good at it.
Carmen was easygoing, like outgoing person.
And outgoing Carmen never had trouble dating either, although she had very specific taste in men.
Carmen was dating the older gentleman.
Men like Samuel Wiggins. Born in 1948, Sam Wiggins was a Los Angeles native.
He grew up in Compton, and then he served in the Vietnam War. After that, he returned to the Los Angeles area and worked in the aerospace industry.
And by the time he met Carmen, he was retired and single.
I didn't think Sam was the marrying type, because he had never been married, you know. He had some long-term relationships, but he never did the I do thing, you know.
Not that the lifelong bachelor was exactly lonely. He had a large circle of old friends.
We met 63 while in the 10th grade at Centennial High School.
There was a group of us. We were close in school, and a lot of us are still close now as we are adults.
He was also close to his neighbors in the middle-class community of Diamond Bar.
He had neighbors that looked at him as a grandfather figure and loved him. He went to his neighbors' children's birthday parties, taught them how to play baseball.
My kids didn't see him as that's just a neighbor. My kids saw him as the neighbor that wasn't really a neighbor. It was more of a family member living next door.
However, by the time he entered his 60s, there were signs that the lifelong bachelor was getting lonely, rambling around the big house in Diamond Bar.
The last couple of years, he'd been looking for someone to settle down with, so he was doing internet dating.
He liked to check a dating website most every day.
Although that wasn't how he met Carmen in the summer of 2009.
They met because Samuel Wiggins had advertised to rent a room in his house.
Sam, lived in a 4-bedroom house with a pool, and it was a very nice house. It was spacious.
And Carmen, with her kids grown, was looking for an inexpensive place to live.
She answered the ad.
But she didn't rent the room.
She said it was too small, there wasn't an air conditioning unit, so she declined.
Sam's room for rent may not have made much of an impression on Carmen, but she apparently made quite an impression on Sam, who asked her out repeatedly.
According to her, he kept pestering her. He kept calling her, wanting to go out with her, and apparently she eventually relented and went out with him.
That first date soon led to another and another.
He said, we laugh, we have fun, she's nice.
That's what his friends thought too, once Sam introduced them to Carmen.
She sat down, had a glass of wine with Sam and I, and we were laughing and talking. It's okay, Sam, got a little lady, and she's rolling with him.
And the more than 10-year difference in their ages didn't seem to matter.
He really felt that this was a person that he had connected with.
However, Carmen also valued her independence.
She didn't live there continually. She visited him and stayed with him.
It was an on and off relationship.
And despite the fact that she'd initially met him while inquiring about a room to rent, she maintained her own place and her privacy.
Even though they were dating, he had to call or let her know that he was coming.
Still, for all its idiosyncrasies, the relationship appeared to work.
He was looking for a companion. He was looking for somebody to be able to go out and have time to go to dinner and those kind of things with somebody.
And Carmen was more than happy to spend time with Sam, so long as he picked up the check.
He thought Carmen was taking advantage of him, but the physical relationship overweighed that. He stayed with her because of sex.
He told me. She got big boobs, I like big boobs. He was just real down to earth and honest like that.
In fact, Sam appreciated his relationship with Carmen so much that at one point, he paid her daughter's tuition.
Her daughter was attending a nearby college.
Still, while Sam seemed fine with the relationship, his friends worried.
She seems nice, but I wasn't comfortable with her.
And in April of 2011, 2 years after he'd started dating Carmen, those nagging concerns would take on a new urgency.
Towards the end of April, I called him and left a message. I said, hey, Sam, I haven't heard from you. What's going on?
His friend, Corrine Fuller, wasn't the only one who became concerned either.
I called his house and I left a message saying, Sam, I haven't seen you in a few days. Make sure you call me.
But Sam never called anyone back.
It was unusual that I didn't get no response back. And I said, well, maybe something happened.
However, one of Sam's neighbors did more than just wonder. At the beginning of May, she called Carmen, who told her not to worry.
She said, he's taking care of some personal business.
On May 25, 2011, Ramon Martin contacted the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and reported that he hadn't heard from his uncle, 62-year-old Sam Wiggins, in weeks.
I had went maybe 2 weeks or something like that. And so I asked my other family members, have you guys heard from him? And everybody looked at each other and was like, no.
That wasn't the only reason he decided to contact the authorities, though. Ramon told the sheriff's department that he'd become so worried about his uncle that earlier that day, he'd dropped by his Diamond Bar home to check on him. And according to Ramon, what he'd found had only caused him to become even more concerned.
The pool had been drained, which he said was not normal. The pool was always full.
And according to Ramon, it was unlikely that the retired aerospace worker had gone on a trip without telling anyone.
My uncle would not just up and leave.
And based on what he'd found inside the house, Ramon believed that his uncle had never left.
The way his clothes are, his shoes, his jogging suit, all your clothes are here, there's something wrong with that picture. So the first thing came to my mind was, I'm calling the police. And at least make a missing person report to find out what's going on.
However, he didn't just tell the authorities that Sam Wiggins was missing. He also gave the investigators a place to start. The woman his uncle had been dating, 51-year-old Carmen Montelongo.
Ramon says Carmen knows where he's at.
Once Ramon's report was filed, the sheriff's department began a routine missing persons investigation. And when they did, the investigators noticed something unusual.
There were several missing persons reports done for Mr. Wiggins.
As it turned out, at least one of Sam's neighbors had also reported him missing in the past few days, concerned that it had been a while since they'd seen or heard from Sam.
If he was going on vacation, he would have told me and a couple other close friends. Somebody would have known.
However, that report had been closed, even though no one had actually seen or spoken with Sam.
That one was resolved when the neighbor said that she'd seen his car coming and going.
He never lent his car out. We just assumed it was Sam.
Meanwhile, the investigators looking into Ramon's report got in touch with Carmen.
The sheriff's department had contacted Carmen Montelongo over the phone, and they asked where Samuel was.
Carmen had a ready answer.
That he was with this person named Emmett in Pomona.
That she had just seen him the day before.
Carmen's answer was enough to satisfy the missing persons investigator, but not Sam's nephew. Ramon Martin returned to his uncle's house the next day, May 26th, and found something on a hallway wall that wasn't just worrying. He felt it was cause for alarm.
I looked around and I saw specks of blood.
At least he thought it was blood. But when the sheriff's deputies came out, they told Ramon it probably wasn't.
They were like, oh no, it's not blood, that's blood on the wall.
Blood or not, the incident did lead the deputy investigating the missing persons case to make a follow-up call with Carmen. A call she apparently didn't appreciate.
She just believed that this deputy was harassing her.
In fact, once the deputy hung up, Carmen phoned into the sheriff's office to complain about him.
He just keeps harassing me.
Who does?
That guy, that sheriff.
Considering they were investigating a missing persons case involving her boyfriend, the detective who took her complaint found it odd, even suspicious.
She was unreasonable and uncooperative.
And since she already had Carmen on the phone...
You haven't gotten in touch with Samuel, have you?
No, I just talked to him. I talked to him like right after I spoke to you, I talked to him.
But when the investigator asked how she could speak to Sam, Carmen started stalling.
Does he have a cell phone?
He had one.
Does he still have one?
Well, he had one, but it's not working right now.
And then she repeated the same story she'd already given the investigators.
She kept saying that he was with this person named Emmett, that no one could locate.
And Carmen was no help. In fact, she claimed that she didn't even know Emmett's last name.
I don't really know too much about this guy.
But she did hint that if anything had happened to Sam, it was probably the mysterious Emmett's doing.
He doesn't look very trustworthy, and that he's doing drugs.
To the investigators, it was clear Sam didn't associate with people like the mysterious Emmett Carmen was talking about.
They knew none of that was true.
So figuring Emmett was a dead end, the investigator turned the conversation to Carmen and Sam's relationship.
How long have you guys been dating?
3 years.
And according to Carmen, things were turning serious. In fact, she told the investigator that they were moving in together.
You're moving into Samuel's house?
Yes.
Okay.
It's been in process.
And then she told the investigator that she'd been using Sam's car.
So did Samuel give it to you?
Yeah, it was agreed that I could drive the car.
Okay.
When he asked me to move in, I told him I need transportation.
By the time the phone call was over, the investigators were convinced that Carmen knew more about Sam's disappearance than she admitted to.
She gave these unbelievable excuses.
Cooperated as reluctantly as she could.
But she had inadvertently given the investigators one piece of useful information, too.
She was driving his car around town,
which explained why the neighbors had seen it.
We saw the car drive by, but weren't paying attention to who was in the car.
And on May 29th, when the investigators drove out to Carmen's Riverside, California home, they found it parked in her driveway.
Los Angeles Sheriff's Department had a cadaver dog examine that car, and the dog alerted to the trunk of the car.
When the investigators popped the trunk, there was no sign of Sam. But based on the dog's reaction, the investigators now had a strong suspicion that the missing man was dead.
This dog is trained to find the scent of human decomposition.
But if Sam was dead, where was the body? And where was Carmen? Since talking to the police on the phone, she'd disappeared too. And the investigators had a pretty good idea why she'd vanished.
Carmen panicked. She knew that the police were closing in.
However, Carmen wasn't on the run. Instead, at that same moment, she was doing something almost too crazy to be believed. That same Sunday, even as the LA County Sheriff's Department was searching Sam's car with a cadaver dog, police in nearby Ontario, California, received a 911 call from a relative of Carmen's, Matthew Bell.
My cousin, she got herself into some
By May 29, 2011, the Sunday before Memorial Day, it had been 4 days since Samuel Wiggins had been reported missing from his Diamond Bar, California home.
Last time I talked to Sam was about the middle of April.
However, there had been one person who claimed she was still in contact with Sam, the missing man's 51-year-old girlfriend, Carmen Montelongo.
She tried to give them some sort of sense that he was still alive.
However, the authorities now had very good reason to doubt that. That afternoon, her cousin, Matthew Bell, had called 911 and reported that Carmen was digging up a body in his backyard.
All I see is chopped up leg.
I was in shock at that point. I was just amazed. I thought there was nothing else I could see.
Although in hindsight, Matthew might have seen it coming. Matthew and his girlfriend lived in a rental house that belonged to Carmen's aunt. And according to Matthew, Carmen had been coming around in the last few days, up to something.
Carmen was coming back and forth, digging around a lot. She was digging all these big holes all over the yard.
She had been telling people that she was going to plant a garden and re-landscape the backyard.
She had flower pots, a lot of dirt with her always. She's always busy, come at night.
And now, according to what Matthew told the dispatcher, she was out back, digging up what she had planted.
She's unburying bodies in the back, trying to get them out.
She's throwing body parts 1-2 feet away in a trash can, just throwing parts.
It sounds unbearable.
All I remember is just throwing up.
Needless to say, Matthew, his girlfriend, and his little brother, who was also at the house, didn't stick around.
Can you walk out of the house?
I'm already up the street.
Not that Carmen was going to let them get away that easily.
She's following us.
She was dragging the trash can behind her down the street after Matthew, continuing to ask him for his help.
But Matthew wasn't about to stop.
I was a little scared. I just wanted to get out of there.
Which is what Carmen tried to do too when the police arrived moments later.
When Ontario Police Department rolls up on her, she is almost a block and a half away from the actual house.
She like parked the trash can in front of somebody's house and just started walking up the driveway into the house like she lived there.
But she was only halfway to the house when the officer stopped the car and called her back to where the trash can sat on the sidewalk.
The cop was like, come here, come here. Are you pulling this?
There was a sweater over the top of the trash can.
Reluctantly, Carmen returned to the curb.
She was pretty calm, just like answering the questions that they asked.
But then, the officer at the scene pulled back the sweater.
Removing that sweater revealed a human body.
His torso, guts.
They suspected that the victim was Samuel.
But when she was placed under arrest, Carmen wouldn't say.
The only thing that Carmen Montelongo would tell us was, that's the son of a bitch that raped me.
Within minutes, Carmen was transported to the Ontario, California police station for an interview.
Okay, Carmen. Sorry. I'm Detective Parra. This doesn't look good.
Frankly, neither did Carmen.
She still had debris, dirt, and human decomposition stains on her. And there was an odor.
But how did she end up wheeling a dismembered body down the street? And what did she mean by her cryptic comment about the man who raped her? Asked for an explanation, Carmen appeared willing to talk on one condition.
I will tell you the entire truth. I will tell you everything. Just get my lawyer here. That's all.
But that wouldn't be easy, considering it was Memorial Day weekend.
I made efforts to call her attorney to try and get him there. There was never any answer.
So, unable to reach Carmen's attorney, the investigator read Carmen her rights and then gave her one last chance to talk.
Okay. Do you want to tell me your side of the story right now?
I told you I will. As soon as he gets here.
Okay, we're done. Okay. We're done. Good luck.
And considering the circumstances, Carmen would probably need all the luck she could get.
We charged her with first-degree murder.
But while the investigators suspected the victim was Sam, it was tough to say with any certainty without the whole body.
The trash can did not contain his head and his arms, so at first the police could not make an ID.
So even as Carmen was being interrogated, the Ontario police swarmed over her aunt's house in hopes of unearthing the rest of the remains.
6 other units came, and then like 3 other helicopters came, and 10 more units came, and then FBI came, and it was just really kind of crazy.
Out back, the investigators found where Carmen had no doubt unearthed the body parts.
A grave that had the odor of human decomposition.
But while a forensic team spent hours digging up the rest of the backyard,
There were just massive holes everywhere.
they failed to find the rest of the body.
The head and the arms were still missing.
The search continued on Tuesday, May 31st, when LA County investigators returned to Sam Wiggins' home in Diamond Bar. Previously, when Sam's nephew Ramon Martin found what he'd believed to be dried blood, the investigators had dismissed his claims.
The first time they go, it's a missing persons report. It wasn't a murder investigation, so they weren't looking for essentially anything that would show there was foul play.
But now they were investigating a homicide. And this time they decided that the tiny smear was blood.
It was very clear that that scene had been cleaned.
But whoever had cleaned up did miss enough blood to provide some revealing clues, specifically in and around Sam's bedroom.
In the front of his bedroom door, there's blood smeared on the top of that wall. And then there's blood splattered very close to the bottom of it. So I believe that that's where he fell.
The activity log of Sam's computer suggested he'd been dead for at least a month, too.
Samuel Wiggins likely died on or about April 26th, because up until that time, every day he checked this dating website. And on April 26th of 2011, he stopped doing that.
Sam's banking and credit card records told a similar story.
Mr. Wiggins was a creature of habit. He did everything the same all the time. He would go to Walmart, he would go to Costco, he would go get gas at a certain location.
But then, after April 26th,
that pattern changed.
For the investigators, the reason was all too clear.
Carmen was, using his credit card, using his ATM card.
And she had apparently used his ATM card a lot.
She was withdrawing large sums of money, $300, $500 at a time.
The investigators had a motive, a crime scene, and a body. But there was still one thing missing.
The body had yet to be identified as Samuel Wiggins.
Because while the search of Sam's house had generated plenty of evidence to suggest he'd been murdered, it had failed to turn up any more body parts, leading the investigators to suspect they were buried somewhere else. And as it turned out, they were right. From the start, Carmen's arrest and the bizarre circumstances surrounding it had made news all across greater Los Angeles.
A woman who was found wheeling a trash can containing the partial remains of a man. That's just, those kind of things don't happen.
The community was shocked. Ontario, this neighborhood specifically, didn't see it coming.
And for Sam's friends and family, the shocking news also confirmed their worst fears.
When I saw that image of her on TV, it was just horrible. And, our close friends from high school that are still close were calling me and asking me, Corrine, did you see it?
Carmen's mother saw the news reports too. And on June 1st, she contacted the Ontario police with an interesting tip.
She told us that on Mother's Day, May 8th, some 2 weeks prior, Carmen had dropped off 2 large potted plants at some property that she owns in the city of Bell Gardens.
Investigators immediately rushed over to the modest home in Bell Gardens.
And the plants were still there.
Going through the dirt, sifting through the dirt, they found decomposed body parts.
We found a decapitated head and 2 arms.
The next day, June 2nd, the medical examiner was finally able to confirm what the investigators had suspected from the moment they found the first dismembered body parts.
We were able to identify those as belonging to Samuel Wiggins.
And by combining what the autopsy revealed with the blood evidence from the crime scene, the investigators were able to reconstruct how he died. And what they found only added to the already gruesome horror. The investigators believe that the murder started with an attack outside Sam's bedroom door.
From the evidence we have, I believe that he was stabbed twice in the chest while he was standing in the front of his bedroom door. He grabs onto the wall and then he falls.
But that was only the beginning of Sam's ordeal, because based on his many subsequent injuries, the investigators believe that once he was on the ground, Carmen had then fallen on her now helpless lover, lashing out in a murderous frenzy.
That's when she stabs him 22 times in the back.
That's overkill. It's hard for me to imagine someone doing that to another human being.
And then, once he was dead,
he was dismembered, and some of the parts were removed from the body by a knife. Others were sawed off.
We don't know when he was in fact dismembered. But we do know that it was sometime before May 8th, because that's when she delivered his head and arms to Bell Gardens.
She gave away those flower pots to a cousin as gifts. It was just the craziest case.
On August 7th, 2014, Carmen Montelongo stood trial for murder at the San Bernardino County Courthouse. The 54-year-old was charged with killing and dismembering her boyfriend, Samuel Wiggins, a 62-year-old retired aerospace worker who had disappeared from his Diamond Bar, California home in April of 2011.
Eventually, around May 25th, Samuel's relatives started realizing that Samuel was missing.
And 4 days later, Carmen had been caught with his dead body, at least part of it.
They had found her with the trash can with my uncle's torso in it, walking down the street.
This was such a bizarre story. Cutting up body parts and digging holes in the ground and dragging body parts down the street. I think we were all just really surprised.
And no one had been more shocked than Sam's friends.
This is the same lady that sat on my sofa and drank wine at my house.
Not that Carmen had done much socializing lately. She'd been in jail ever since her arrest, unable to make the $1 million bail.
She stayed in the county jail for about 3 years, up until her trial.
And the prosecutor was determined to see that Carmen stayed behind bars for a long time. In her opening statement, she portrayed Carmen as a cold-blooded murderer.
The theme of my case was Carmen Montelongo used Mr. Wiggins, that for her, he was worth more to her dead than alive, and that she would do anything to get away with this murder.
But when it was the defense's turn, they offered a very different motive. In fact, it was the same one Carmen had given the police when they first caught her wheeling Sam's dismembered remains down an Ontario, California sidewalk.
Her defense attorney had started her opening statement by saying that Carmen Montelongo had been raped by the victim.
Out in the courtroom, Sam's friends and neighbors were appalled.
Where she concocted this story from, I don't know, because that's not the person that I grew with. I've been friends with a long time.
Him being aggressive to a woman, I've never seen it.
As far as the prosecutors were concerned, the accusation was so preposterous that they paid it little heed. Instead, they opened their case with a string of witnesses who detailed how Carmen had supported herself for most of her adult life.
She was sleeping with guys for money.
However, according to the prosecution, Carmen wasn't technically a prostitute. Instead, they explained that she was more of a con artist.
She seduced elderly men with sex to take advantage of them financially.
She had been preying on other older men, that this was her MO.
She was a Black Widow type.
Although, as far as the authorities knew, Sam was the only one she'd killed. In fact, they put one of Carmen's former lovers, an elderly gentleman named Carmelo, on the witness stand.
Carmen was seeing Carmelo at the same time she was seeing Samuel Wiggins.
Carmelo said the two men didn't know about one another, which explained why Carmen had set some strict rules about when Sam could come to see her.
Carmen would never allow Mr. Wiggins to come to her house unannounced.
According to Carmelo, the same was true for him.
Carmelo testified in court that she took financial advantage of him as well.
She was using him for his money.
But he wasn't the only one. As the prosecutor told the jury, Carmen took another of her sugar daddies for everything he was worth. A man named Jaquez, he'd started dating Carmen in his 60s when she was still in her 20s.
Jaquez was with Carmen for 20 years.
According to his family, they had tried to intervene.
They will tell you that they tried to get in between Jaquez and Carmen for years, but they couldn't, because it was about sex. They couldn't get their father away from Carmen.
And at the end of those 20 years, Carmen had left him virtually penniless.
I talked to witnesses that said Jaquez was basically living on the street, begging neighbors for food, and Carmen Montelongo was collecting his Social Security check.
But what separated Sam Wiggins from men like Jaquez and Carmelo? According to his friends, it's that he eventually wised up.
From my last conversation with Sam regarding Carmen, is that he was going to cut her loose.
However, Sam hadn't stopped there.
He's told neighbors that Carmen was stealing money from him and that he was going to report her to the police.
But had he told Carmen, too? If so, the decision may well have cost Sam his life.
I think Carmen just snapped.
That's what the prosecutors believed, and they had plenty of evidence to back it up, too.
The most damning piece of evidence we had was what she did after the murder, trying to hide the body, as well as her use of his ATM cards and his credit cards.
However, it only looked damning, according to the defense. And on August 20th, they began their case by calling a witness they said could explain everything.
Carmen Montelongo was going to take the stand and testify on her own behalf.
And it was true. The explanation she offered up for Sam's murder seemed to exonerate her of the crime.
When Carmen Montelongo took the stand, she wanted to wash her hands of everything.
According to Carmen's testimony, she didn't murder Sam at all. Instead, she pinned the entire thing on the man she'd milked out of his Social Security.
She said that Jaquez had killed him.
And why would her elderly lover kill Sam?
She said that she was raped by Samuel Wiggins and told Jaquez.
She confided in him, and then she didn't see him for 2 days. And then when she went back to Mr. Wiggins' home, she discovered Mr. Wiggins already dismembered. And that was her story.
But there was still the matter of how she'd ended up pulling his dismembered remains down the street in a trash can.
She said to the jury that for the last 3 days, Los Angeles Sheriff's Department was insisting that they wanted to see Samuel Wiggins, and they were harassing her. So she was taking the body of Samuel Wiggins to the Walnut Police Sheriff Substation to show them where Samuel Wiggins was.
It was pretty preposterous, but that was her claim.
That's what she said on the stand. I kid you not.
And she seemed pretty sure of herself when she said it, too.
She would smirk at you. You know, she would give you this look of satisfaction, almost.
She's just had this sort of arrogance that she knows what's going on and the rest of us have no clue.
And as incredible as Carmen's story might be, there was one advantage to pinning Sam's murder on Jaquez. He couldn't deny it.
At the point that the trial happened, he had already passed away.
Jaquez died in 2013, so she was blaming it on a dead person.
Was it possible? Could one lover have killed the other? The investigators and prosecutors considered it highly unlikely.
He was an elder gentleman, about 85 or 87 years old.
He was an old, feeble man, not capable of that kind of crime.
But would the jury believe it? By the time she finished testifying, Carmen appeared convinced that she had made her case.
She looked cocky, like she had it in the box. She was going to win the trial.
On August 29, 2014, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury announced that it had reached a verdict in Carmen Montelongo's murder trial. The 54-year-old was charged with the 2011 murder and dismemberment of her boyfriend, Samuel Wiggins.
To cut Samuel's body into pieces and try to hide his head and hide his arms, bury his body at a different location. All of these different steps that she took was just so strange.
Even stranger, at trial, Carmen had pinned the entire crime on another former boyfriend, despite the fact that he was in his 80s at the time.
It was clear that things she was saying were just self-serving and not based on any of the evidence.
If you believed her story, you had to disbelieve every other witness.
But which ones had the jurors believed? When the verdict was read, they found Carmen guilty of first-degree murder.
The jury never believed Carmen Montelongo.
One of the things they said that was compelling was when Carmen took the stand and gave the unbelievable, ludicrous statement that she was taking the body to the police station to show the police where Samuel Wiggins was.
Although when it came to outrageous statements, Carmen wasn't done. Allowed to address the court at her September 29th sentencing hearing, she stood before the judge and started making demands.
She wanted a motion for a new trial, and she wanted to be her own attorney.
The judge denied Carmen's requests.
He told Carmen that she had received a fair trial, that she even took the stand in her own defense, and her statements were preposterous.
And then he sentenced her to 26 years to life. Considering what Sam had suffered, his friends and neighbors were more than satisfied with the outcome.
We wanted to sit on that front row and clap, but we knew it wasn't appropriate.
The people that knew him loved him and cared about him.
He was a good man. The neighborhood,
we all miss him.
And to this day, they still struggle to understand just how such a horrible thing happened to him.
You try to make sense of it, and you can't make sense of it. There's no reason, there's nothing in this world that can tell me she was right in what she did.
See that? That was amazing. I love this.
In the intricate tapestry of human connection, where threads of affection, trust, and vulnerability intertwine, there sometimes lurks a darker, parasitic strand, a meticulously woven web of deceit designed to ensnare the unsuspecting heart and, ultimately, extinguish its very beat. Such was a tragic tale that began to unravel in the quiet, sun-drenched suburbs of Southern California, a narrative not passion or sudden impulse, but a methodical exploitation culminating in a horror almost beyond human comprehension. This is a story of Carmen Montelongo and Sam Wiggins, a study in the insidious nature of financial predation and the ultimate triumph of determined justice over the most chilling forms of human cruelty. The story begins innocently enough, as many profound tragedies often do, with a chance encounter blossoming into what, from the outside, might have appeared to be a conventional, if somewhat unconventional, relationship. More than a decade, specifically 11 years, separated Carmen Montelongo, then 51 years of age, and Samuel Wiggins, a distinguished 62-year-old. This age difference, typically a detail one might notice and then dismiss in the grand scheme of genuine affection, would, in this instance, prove to be a subtle precursor to the imbalance that pervaded their relationship. Samuel, a man of warmth and an engaging spirit, genuinely believed he had found a kindred soul. He really felt that this was a person that he had connected with, remarked a close acquaintance, painting a picture of Samuel's earnest desire for companionship. His own words echoed the sentiment, simple yet heartfelt. We laugh, we have fun. For Samuel, these were the cornerstones of a promising partnership, signs of a connection that transcended mere acquaintance, hinting at a future filled with shared joy. Their relationship, as is often the case with the narratives we dissect in the field of criminal psychology, was a slow burn, smoldering quietly for more than 2 years before the embers turned to ash and, ultimately, to an inferno of unimaginable horror. Then came the silence, an absence that, to the attuned ears of Samuel's friends and family, spoke volumes louder than any explicit declaration. The disquiet began with calls unanswered, with misappointments, with a stark, uncharacteristic void where Samuel's dependable presence once animated their lives. I called his house and I left a message, recalled a concerned friend, the words now imbued with chilling prescience. Sam, I haven't seen you in a few days. Something's not right. That nagging intuition, that internal alarm bell, proved tragically accurate, heralding the horrifying discovery that awaited. The subsequent actions of the law enforcement community, moving with methodical precision and unwavering resolve, would soon peel back the layers of crime almost too sickening to contemplate, a grim tableau of human depravity that challenged the very limits of decency. The initial call was for a missing person, a routine inquiry. Yet what it slowly uncovered was anything but, as the investigators meticulously gathered clues, the fragments of Samuel's last days began to form a macabre mosaic. She's carrying a contract and a body's in it, a phrase uttered in chilling understatement, would ultimately reveal the depths of the perpetrator's calculated malice. The scene that greeted the first responders was one that haunted even the most hardened veterans. Some of the parts were sawn over. The cold, mechanical brutality of the dismemberment suggested a depravity that transcended mere rage, hinting at a detached, almost industrial, approach to the defilement of a human body. The revelation grew more twisted, more profoundly disturbing, with each discovered detail. Others had been hidden in flower pots. She gave away those flower pots as gifts. The casual cruelty, the almost grotesque normalization of such an act, transformed innocent horticultural offerings into vessels of unspeakable horror, symbols of a mind utterly devoid of empathy, twisting everyday gestures into instruments of desecration. Samuel Wiggins certainly did not deserve to die like that. This universal truth underscores a profound sense of injustice and tragedy that permeates this case. He was a man deeply rooted in his community, cherished by friends and family, and his brutal end at the hands of someone he had welcomed into his life stands as a stark reminder of the hidden dangers lurking beneath veneers of normalcy, and the reason for his murder, the dark motive behind this meticulously planned act of barbarism, was something only Carmen Montelongo could explain, though her explanations would prove to be a fabric woven entirely of calculated deceit. "I will tell you the entire truth," she declared, a promise laden with irony. For the truth she offered was a distorted echo of reality, a self-serving narrative designed to obfuscate, to deflect, and to escape accountability. The narrative darkens and intensifies as we pivot to the date that irrevocably altered the lives of many and seared itself into the annals of criminal history. Ontario, California, May 29, 2011. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, bathed in the mellow light characteristic of this middle-class suburb, located approximately 35 miles east of the sprawling urban heart of Los Angeles, a component part of Southern California's vast Inland Empire region. The Inland Empire, a sprawling conurbation, is often characterized as a region existing just outside of the main city area where people live, and then they commute into LA for work. It is a landscape of homes and suburban rhythms, generally undisturbed by the sensationalism that sometimes defines its metropolitan neighbor. But that sleepy suburban calm, that predictable cadence of a weekend afternoon, would be abruptly and violently shattered when 18-year-old Matthew Bell dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The calm, measured voice on the other end of the line was in stark contrast to the rapidly escalating panic of the young man calling. "I'd like to report a murder." At least he thought it was a murder. The young man's conviction was born not of abstract speculation, but of horrifying, first-hand experience. His cousin, Carmen Montelongo, then 51 years old, had just arrived at the house he rented, in an obvious state of profound, uncontrolled panic, an agitation that seeped into every corner of the dwelling, leaving a pervasive sense of dread. Around 12 o'clock, me and my little brother and my ex-girlfriend at the time, we were in the living room, Matthew recounted, his voice still etched with the memory of that unnerving intrusion. She kind of just walked in like frantic. This frantic demeanor was not merely a display of general anxiety. It was directed, focused, and chillingly specific. According to Matthew, Carmen was extremely frantic to achieve one singular objective, to exhume something, some concealed object, from the soft earth of the backyard. Her desperation was palpable, expressed in an offer that, to a young man, would have seemed staggering. She said, Can you guys help me? I'll give you guys $5,000 each. Matthew and his brother, initially swayed by the promise of such a significant sum, had, in a moment of youthful naivety, initially taken Carmen up on her unusual offer. They began to dig, perhaps with a sense of adventure mixed with the allure of quick money, completely unaware of the macabre secret hidden beneath the soil. But their participation, fortunately, was as quickly aborted as it had begun. The abrupt termination of their macabre excavation came the moment Carmen, digging with frenzied determination, reached the buried object, wrapped in what appeared to be an innocuous trash bag, lying at the bottom of the hole. Bag ripped, and the smell and everything, it just slapped me like hard. Matthew recollected, the raw, visceral shock still evident in his voice. The stench, a thick putrid miasma, was overwhelming, an affront to the senses that triggered an immediate and profound physical reaction. Matthew described himself as gagging and throwing up. The sheer force of the odor, the unmistakable scent of human decomposition, signaled an atrocity far beyond anything a young man could comprehend or endure. He ended up leaving the ghastly scene, scrambling away from the source of the unimaginable smell, and it was in that moment of desperate retreat, that overwhelming flight response, that he made the decision to call the police. The stench, a phantom predator, pursued him, a clinging, pervasive horror. It felt like it was unbearable. It couldn't get away from me. It was like surrounding the whole block. The psychological impact of such an experience, the sudden confrontation with abject human cruelty, is profound, scarring the memory and assaulting the senses in a way few other experiences can. But the smell, though horrifying, was not the only inescapable element from which Matthew found himself trying to escape. Matthew recounted to the arriving police officers that at that terrifying moment, he, his brother, and his ex-girlfriend were not only fleeing the house and the source of the unbearable odor, but they were also being actively pursued by Carmen. Her desperation, far from abating, had escalated into a persistent, unsettling pursuit. She's like, come here, come here. He imitated her frantic entreaties, her voice laced with an urgent, almost insane need for their continued complicity. She implored them to return, to help her complete the ghastly task. But Matthew's answer was resolute, fueled by an understandable terror. I'm like, no, I don't want to come. I don't want nothing to do with that. The psychological defense mechanism, a complete rejection of the unfolding horror, was absolute. And, according to Matthew, Carmen's pursuit was not empty-handed. In a detail that would prove to be a crucial, if bizarre, piece of evidence, he described her pulling an everyday object down the street, an object transformed by its macabre contents into a conveyance of unimaginable horror. She was pulling this little trash can down the street. She's carrying a trash can that bothers him. This image, simultaneously mundane and deeply unsettling, cemented the urgency and the grotesque nature of the crime that had unfolded. The sight of a middle-aged woman, frantically dragging a large wheeled receptacle, itself emanating the stench of death, after three terrified young people, painted a vivid and disturbing picture of a mind unhinged by its own dark deeds. To fully understand the tragedy, one must first understand the central figures, not just as players in a criminal drama, but as individuals shaped by their histories and environments. Carmen Montelongo, born in 1959, emerged from the vibrant, complex mosaic of Los Angeles, a part of a large immigrant family. Her familial roots extended deeply into a specific town in Mexico, a heritage shared with several half-siblings and several cousins. This large, extended family network would, paradoxically, become intertwined with her descent into criminal infamy. By her mid-20s, Carmen had embarked upon a seemingly conventional path, marrying and beginning to cultivate a family of her own, a common aspiration for many young women. She was born a girl. The detail underscores her origins as an ordinary person, one whose life began without any inherent predisposition towards a horrific path she would eventually tread. However, this early conventionality proved to be ephemeral. The marriage did not endure, a common enough occurrence in the vicissitudes of human relationships. By her 30s, Carmen found herself navigating life independently, a single mother endeavoring to raise 2 children alone. This period of her life, marked by financial strain and personal struggle, offers a potential glimpse into the shaping of her subsequent predatory behaviors, though certainly not an excuse for them. She found employment with the Automobile Club of Southern California, widely known as AAA, situated in Riverside, California. But, mirroring the trajectory of her marriage, this professional stability also proved fleeting. She was eventually laid off from that job, pushing her further into the precarious landscape of economic insecurity. Faced with this challenge, Carmen, perhaps with a characteristic self-reliance, chose to work for herself. She worked as a consultant. This designation, however, was a fancy way of putting it. In the gritty reality of her circumstances, she operated on periphery of Los Angeles' vibrant yet often opaque underground economy. Her skills, particularly her social acumen and her ability to navigate complex administrative landscapes, were repurposed to assist recent immigrants from Mexico in acclimating to their new surroundings. If someone was looking for a tenant, she would help the landlord find it. If someone was looking for a place to stay, she would help them find it. These seemingly benign intermediary roles allowed her to pick up commissions or find a seat from. That, and apparently that was how she lived. It was not a glamorous existence, certainly lacking the conventional trappings of stable employment and upward mobility, but Carmen, by all accounts, appeared to be good at it. Her personality facilitated these interactions. Carmen was usually like an outgoing person. This outward sociability, an asset in her unconventional profession, would also prove to be a tool in her darker pursuits, allowing her to charm and disarm. An outgoing Carmen never encountered difficulties in dating. Though her romantic inclinations were notably specific, her preferences leaned towards the older gentleman, a consistent pattern in her romantic entanglements. It was through this particular lens of attraction that she encountered men like Samuel Wiggins, individuals whose age and assumed stability likely made them appear both desirable and, from a predatory perspective, potentially vulnerable. Samuel Wiggins, born in 1948, was a native son of Los Angeles, his roots deeply embedded in the community of Compton. His life trajectory, a narrative common to many men of his generation, included military service during the tumultuous Vietnam War. Upon his return, he reintegrated into civilian life within the Los Angeles area, securing employment in the demanding aerospace industry. By the time fate, or rather a classified advertisement, brought him into Carmen's orbit, he had reached a point of comfortable retirement and was navigating life as a single man. Samuel, by all accounts, was not the Marion type. His lifelong bachelor status was well known among his circle. He had never been married, observed a friend, capturing Samuel's independent spirit. While he had engaged in some long-term relationships, he had consistently refrained from the I do thing, Yet, this lifelong avoidance of matrimony did not translate into a life of isolation. Far from it, Samuel cultivated a rich and extensive social life. He maintained a large circle of old friends, many of whom dated back to his formative years. "We met 63 while in the 10th grade at Centennial High School," recalled a friend, underscoring the deep, enduring bonds that characterized Samuel's relationships. "There was a group of us who were close to school, and a lot of us are still close now as we are adults." These were not fleeting acquaintances, but anchors in his life, testament to his loyalty and warmth. His connections extended beyond his high school cohorts. He was equally endeared to his neighbors within the comfortable, middle-class community of Diamond Bar. He had neighbors that looked at him as a grandfather figure and loved him. This affectionate designation speaks volumes about his character, his willingness to engage and contribute to the fabric of his local community. He went to his neighbors' children's birthday parties, taught them how to play baseball. These small, consistent gestures cemented his place in the hearts of those around him. His presence was so integrated into their lives that his neighbors' children did not perceive him as a mere resident next door. My kids didn't see him as, that's just my neighbor. My kids saw him as the neighbor that wasn't really a neighbor. It was more of a family member living next door. This heartwarming portrayal highlights a man who, though not burdened by the conventional responsibilities of immediate family, enriched the lives of those within his sphere through genuine connection and an abundance of warmth. However, as Samuel transitioned into his 60s, a subtle shift began to manifest in his seemingly content bachelorhood. There were signs, detectable to those closest to him, that the lifelong independence, while cherished, was beginning to yield to a quiet sense of loneliness. The spacious 4-bedroom house in Diamond Bar, a testament to his successful career and comfortable retirement, now felt perhaps a little too big, a little too quiet as he rambled around his expansive rooms. The last couple years, he'd been looking for someone to settle down with, a friend observed, pinpointing a burgeoning desire for committed companionship. This yearning, a natural human instinct, led him to explore avenues previously perhaps considered, but not actively pursued. He was doing internet dating. He liked to check a dating website most every day. The digital realm, with its promise of connection, became a new landscape for Samuel's search for a soulmate. But, ironically, it was not through the impersonal interface of a dating website that he encountered Carmen Montelongo in the summer of 2009. Their meeting arose from a far more pragmatic, almost prosaic circumstance. Samuel Wiggins had advertised for a room to rent in his generous Diamond Bar residence. His house, described as a 4-bedroom house with a pool, was indeed a very nice house, spacious, offering ample room for a lodger. Carmen, whose children had now reached adulthood, was concurrently seeking an inexpensive place to live, a practical necessity in the challenging Southern California housing market. She responded to Samuel's advertisement, a seemingly straightforward inquiry for accommodation. Yet, Carmen ultimately did not rent a room. Her stated reason was practical. She said it was too small. There wasn't an air conditioning unit. So she declined. A seemingly reasonable refusal, yet, in hindsight, pregnant with the dark irony that this pragmatic dismissal would lead to a relationship far more entangled and ultimately deadly than any tenancy agreement. While Sam's room for rent may have failed to impress Carmen, she, by all accounts, apparently made quite an impression on Sam, who, captivated by her outgoing nature and charm, pursued her relentlessly. He asked her out repeatedly. According to her own later, self-serving account, he kept pestering her. He kept calling her, wanting to go out with her. And eventually, through persistence or perhaps calculated consent, she eventually relented and went out with him. That inaugural date, initially a casual outing, soon blossomed into another and another. For Sam, the burgeoning relationship brought a renewed sense of joy and laughter. He said, "We laugh, we have fun, she's nice." These simple affirmations speak to his genuine pleasure in her company. His friends, initially curious, soon echoed his positive sentiments after Samuel proudly introduced him to Carmen. She said, "I don't have a glass of wine with Sam and I. We're laughing and talking. It's okay. Sam, we got a lady. She's rolling with him." The acceptance was broad, the mood lighthearted, and the significant age difference of more than 10 years between them didn't seem to matter to their circle. For Samuel, this was more than a casual dalliance. He really felt that this was a person that he had connected with, affirming his search for deep companionship. However, beneath the surface of apparent harmony, certain idiosyncrasies in their relationship hinted at a deeper, more complex dynamic ones that a trained observer might recognize as red flags. Carmen, while engaging with Samuel, also valued her independence. This wasn't necessarily a negative trait in itself, but in her case, it manifested in peculiar ways. She didn't live there continually. She visited him and stayed with him. It was a not and off relationship. Furthermore, despite their apparent closeness and the circumstances of their initial meeting, Carmen maintained her own place and her privacy. This insistence on separate living arrangements extended even to the very etiquette of their shared time. Even though they were dating, he had to call or let her know that he was coming. These behaviors, while superficially appearing as markers of a healthy respect for personal space, could also be interpreted in a darker light as a means of controlling access, maintaining boundaries for undisclosed activities, and keeping segments of her life rigidly compartmentalized, a common tactic for individuals engaged in deceptive or manipulative practices. Still, despite these curious characteristics, the relationship, at least outwardly, appeared to work for both parties, albeit for fundamentally divergent reasons. Samuel was seeking a companion, someone to share the rich tapestry of his retired life. He was looking for a companion. He was looking for somebody to be able to go out and have time to go to dinner and those kind of things with somebody. Carmen, on the other hand, was more than happy to spend time with Sam, so long as he picked up the check. This seemingly innocuous detail, revealed through candid reflections from Samuel's closest confidants, forms a crucial piece of the psychological puzzle. While Sam's affection was genuine and his desire for companionship authentic, Carmen's motivations, as revealed later, were chillingly pragmatic. One friend starkly summarized the emerging imbalance. He thought Carmen was taking advantage of him, but the physical relationship overweighed that. He stayed with her because of sex. He told me she had big boobs. I like big boobs. He was just real down to earth and honest like that. This raw, unvarnished honesty from Samuel, characteristic of his transparent nature, reveals a vulnerability that Carmen expertly exploited. He valued her company, and his physical attraction created a blind spot, allowing him to rationalize, or at least tolerate, the growing financial imbalance. In fact, Samuel, in a gesture of profound generosity, underscored the depth of his commitment and his desire to provide for Carmen by paying for her daughter's tuition at a nearby college. This was not merely financial assistance. It was an investment in Carmen's extended family, a demonstration of true care that stood in stark contrast to the transactional nature of her affection. Yet, while Samuel appeared to be content, or at least accommodating, in the relationship, his astute friend harbored nascent anxieties. She seems nice, but I wasn't comfortable with her. This visceral unease, difficult to articulate yet persistently felt, speaks to an underlying tension, an unspoken intuition that something was not quite right. That Carmen's affability concealed a less savory aspect, and it was in April of 2011, a full 2 years after the inception of his relationship with Carmen, that these nagging concerns would coalesce and take on a profoundly alarming new urgency, transforming from vague apprehension into acute dread. Towards the end of April, I called him and said, "Hey, Sam, I haven't heard from you. What's going on?" recalled Kareem Fuller, one of Samuel's lifelong friends. Kareem's intuition, honed by decades of friendship, immediately detected an aberration in Samuel's typically consistent pattern of communication. Kareem Fuller, however, was not an isolated voice in the chorus of growing concern. Other friends and neighbors echoed his sentiments, each feeling the unnerving absence of Samuel's dependable presence. I called his house, and I left a message saying, "Sam, I haven't seen you in a few days. Make sure you call me." The cumulative effect of these unanswered calls, these increasingly anxious messages, created an atmosphere of profound unease. But, ominously, Samuel never returned any of these calls. The silence, initially disquieting, soon grew deafening. It was unusual that I didn't get no response back. Fuller explained. I said, well, maybe something happened. The gradual escalation from mild curiosity to genuine alarm is predictable and psychologically. Sound response, when predictable, beloved individual suddenly deviates from established patterns. One of Samuel's astute neighbors, however, chose not to merely speculate. She took direct action. At the beginning of May, she initiated contact with Carmen, explicitly querying about Samuel's whereabouts. Carmen, ever ready with a practiced facade, quickly allayed the neighbor's concerns with a plausible, though ultimately false, explanation. She said he's taking care of some personal business, a response vague enough to avoid immediate suspicion, yet sufficiently misleading to buy Carmen precious time. The situation escalated dramatically on May 25, 2011, when Ramon Martin, Samuel Wiggins' devoted nephew, contacted the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Ramon reported that he had not heard from his uncle, 62-year-old Sam Wiggins, for weeks, a period far exceeding any normal absence. I had went maybe 2 weeks or something like that, Ramon recalled. And so I asked my other family members, have you guys heard from him? And everybody looked at each other and was like, no. This collective ignorance of Samuel's whereabouts served as a powerful impetus for Ramon's official report. But mere absence was not the sole catalyst for Ramon's decisive action. He divulged to the sheriff's department that earlier that very day, consumed by a mounting sense of foreboding, he had driven to his uncle's Diamond Bar home to conduct a personal welfare check. What he discovered upon his arrival only intensified his grave concerns. The pool had been drained, but she said it was not normal. The pool was always full. This anomaly, coupled with his deep understanding of his uncle's habits, served as a blaring alarm. Samuel was meticulous, precise, a creature of habit. For the pool to be drained without explanation was profoundly out of character. Furthermore, Ramon firmly believed that it was unlikely that the retired aerospace worker had gone on a trip without telling anyone. His uncle simply would not just up and leave. This foundational understanding of Samuel's stable, communicative nature clashed starkly with his present unexplained disappearance, adding to the chilling inventory of irregularities. Ramon's inspection of the interior of the house convinced him, with a grim certainty, that his uncle had, in fact, never departed. The way his clothes are his shoes, his jogging suit, all your clothes are here. There's something wrong with that picture. The mundane presence of everyday personal effects, left behind as if Samuel were simply stepping out for a moment, created a terrifying tableau of interrupted life, implying not a departure, but an involuntary absence. This realization galvanized Ramon's resolve. So the first thing that came to my mind was, I'm calling the police, and at least make a missing person report to find out what's going on. Ramon's report was comprehensive, providing not only the crucial fact of Samuel Wiggins' disappearance, but also an initial and profoundly significant starting point for the investigators. He informed them about the woman his uncle had been dating, 51-year-old Carmen Montelongo, explicitly stating, Ramon says Carmen knows where he's at. This statement immediately elevated Carmen from a peripheral figure to a person of significant interest, placing her at the nexus of the unfolding mystery. Once Ramon's report was officially filed, the sheriff's department initiated what was, at first glance, a routine missing persons investigation. However, even in the preliminary stages, the investigators detected an unsettling pattern. There were several missing persons report done for Mr. Wiggins. As it transpired, Samuel was a man so woven into the fabric of his community that his abrupt disappearance had triggered alarm from multiple quarters. At least one of his neighbors had also previously reported him missing, propelled by concern over the unusual length of time since anyone had last seen or heard from him. If he was going on vacation, he would have told me and a couple of other close friends. Somebody would have known, a neighbor articulated, expressing the collective sentiment that Samuel was not one to vanish without a trace. This prior report, however, had been prematurely and erroneously closed. The reason? That one was resolved when a neighbor said that she'd seen his car coming and going. He never let his car out. We just assumed it was Sam. This simple yet crucial error, the assumption that the car's presence implied Samuel's safe passage, underscores the deceptive cunning of the perpetrator, who exploited this assumption to maintain the illusion of Samuel's continued existence. Meanwhile, the investigators assigned to Ramon's active report swiftly established contact with Carmen Montelongo. The sheriff's department had contacted Carmen Montelongo over phone, and they asked where Samuel was. Carmen, as she had done with Samuel's neighbor, provided a ready, seemingly plausible response. Her story was that Samuel was with this person named Emmett in Pomona, a specific detail designed to lend credibility. She further claimed that she had just seen him the day before, a timeline meant to project normalcy and deflect suspicion. Carmen's answer for the initial missing persons investigator proved sufficient to close that particular line of inquiry, momentarily satisfied by her confident assertions. However, Samuel's devoted nephew, Ramon Martin, remained unconvinced, his instincts screaming that something was fundamentally amiss. His deep knowledge of his uncle and his habits served as a potent filter against Carmen's carefully constructed deceptions. Driven by an unshakable sense of unease, Ramon returned to his uncle's house the following day, May 26. His persistent search yielded a chilling discovery on a hallway wall, a detail that was not merely worrying but, in his estimation, unequivocally cause for alarm. I looked around and I saw specks of blood, he recounted, the image seared into his memory. At least he strongly believed it was blood. Yet, when the sheriff's deputies, returning to scene for a follow-up, observed the mark, their initial assessment was dismissive. They downplayed Ramon's grave concerns, assuring him they were like, "Oh, no, it's not blood. That's blood on the wall." This initial misjudgment, born perhaps of a desire to find logical explanations for disturbing anomalies, highlights the challenges inherent in distinguishing between an innocent stain and a vital forensic clue in the early stages of an investigation. Despite the deputy's initial dismissal of the blood stain, the incident did prompt the deputy overseeing the missing persons case to conduct a follow-up telephone call with Carmen. This call, however, proved to be far from productive, primarily because Carmen apparently didn't appreciate the continued scrutiny. Her frustration quickly boiled over into overt hostility. She just believed that this deputy was harassing her, a reaction that, in retrospect, reveals her growing anxiety and a fragile facade beginning to crack under pressure. In a strikingly audacious move, Carmen, immediately after the deputy concluded the call, phoned the sheriff's office herself, not to offer further assistance or express concern for Samuel, but to register a formal complaint about the deputy's perceived harassment. Her indignant complaint. He didn't keep her happy. How does that guy that calls sheriff? Immediately struck the detective, who took her complaint as profoundly odd, even suspicious. Confronted with a missing person case involving her supposed boyfriend, Carmen's primary concern appeared to be her own convenience and dignity rather than Samuel's welfare. The detective noted her behavior as unreasonable and uncooperative, traits that would increasingly define Carmen's interactions with law enforcement. Seizing the opportunity presented by Carmen's unsolicited call, the detective, now keenly attuned to her suspicious demeanor, pressed her further about Samuel's whereabouts. "You haven't gotten in touch with Sam. You'll have to." No. I should have talked to him. I thought to him. Like, right after I took you, I talked to him. Carmen's responses became increasingly evasive and contradictory, a classic indicator of deception. When the investigator inquired about how she could speak to Samuel, Carmen began to overtly stall. Did he have a cell phone? He had one. Does he still have one? Well, he had one, but it's not working right now. Her answers devolved into a frustrating sequence of half-truths and vague declarations. She then resorted to reiterating the same flimsy story she had already presented to the previous investigator. She kept saying that he was with this person named Emmett that no one could locate. Crucially, and perhaps tellingly, Carmen was of no assistance whatsoever in identifying this mysterious Emmett. In fact, she claimed that she didn't even know Emmett's last name. I don't really, know too much about this guy. She feigned ignorance, a transparent attempt to create a phantom alibi, a conveniently untraceable scapegoat. In a brazen maneuver to divert suspicion, Carmen subtly hinted that if anything had happened to Sam, it was probably the mysterious Emmett's doing. Her implied character assassination of Emmett was chillingly pragmatic. He doesn't look very trustworthy. And the end looks like he's doing drugs. To the seasoned investigators, Carmen's portrayal of the supposed associate was entirely inconsistent with Samuel Wiggins's well-established character. They knew none of that was true. Samuel was a man of integrity, deeply respected, and unlikely to associate with individuals fitting Carmen's negative description. Consequently, the narrative involving Emmett was quickly deemed a dead end. The investigator, shifting tactics, then steered the conversation directly to the core of Carmen and Samuel's own relationship. How long have you guys been dating? 2 years. Carmen, maintaining a facade of sincerity, claimed their relationship was evolving into something deeply serious. In fact, she boldly declared to the investigator that they were moving in together. You're moving into Samuel's, house? No. Okay. It's coming softly. Her responses were a perplexing mixture of half-truths and carefully constructed lies. A critical detail then emerged, seemingly innocuous, yet holding profound implications. Carmen confessed that she had been utilizing Samuel's car. The investigator probed, "So did Samuel give it to you?" Carmen's reply, delivered with an air of entitled expectation, was highly illuminating. It was agreed that I could drive the car. When he asked me to move in, I told him I need transportation. This statement revealed not a mutual agreement based on shared affection, but a transactional demand, an exchange of transportation for the supposed progression of their relationship. By the time the protracted phone call concluded, the investigators harbored a firm conviction that Carmen Montelongo possessed significantly more information about Samuel Wiggins's disappearance than she was willing to divulge. She gave these unbelievable excuses, cooperated as reluctantly as she could, remarked one of the investigators, perfectly encapsulating her evasive and self-serving demeanor. However, amidst her carefully constructed web of lies and obfuscation, Carmen had inadvertently provided the investigators with one supremely useful, albeit unwitting, piece of information. Her admission that she was driving his car around town provided the crucial explanation for why. Samuel's vehicle had been repeatedly observed by his neighbors, giving the illusion that Samuel himself was still active. We saw the car drive by, but were paying attention to who was in the car. This seemingly minor detail had been the very mechanism by which Carmen perpetuated the deception, buying her time and allowing her grisly activities to remain hidden. The painstaking investigative work began to accelerate. On May 29th, the investigators journeyed to Carmen's residence in Riverside, California. There, parked conspicuously in her driveway, was Samuel Wiggins's car, the very vehicle whose comings and goings had, for a time, so effectively masked its owner's tragic fate. The arrival of law enforcement marked a critical turning point. Los Angeles Sheriff Department had a cadaver dog examine that car, and the dog alerted to the trunk of the car. This specialized training, harnessing the highly sensitive olfactory capabilities of canines to detect the nuanced sense of human decomposition, represented a crucial investigative tool. When investigators, acting on irrefutable signal from the dog, opened the trunk, They found no sign of Sam. The physical body was absent. However, based on the cadaver dog's precise and unambiguous reaction, the investigators now possessed a profoundly unsettling certainty. They harbored a strong suspicion that the missing man was dead. The science was unequivocal. This dog is trained to find the scent of human decomposition. The chilling reality now stood starkly revealed. Samuel Wiggins was not merely missing. He was dead. But if Samuel was deceased, then the immediate, pressing questions were glaring. Where was his body? And where, for that matter, was Carmen? Since her contentious telephone exchange with the police, Carmen herself had disappeared too, vanishing from her known whereabouts. The investigators, with their growing understanding of her evasive tactics, had a pretty good idea why she'd vanished. The psychological pressure of an intensifying police investigation had pushed her to the precipice. Carmen panicked. She knew that the police were closing in. The meticulous investigative net, cast wider and wider, was steadily tightening around her. However, what happened next was a deviation from the expected pattern of a fugitive. Carmen Montelongo, far from being on a conventional run, was engaged in an activity that was, by all reasonable standards, almost too crazy to be believed. In a bizarre twist of fate and timing, at the very same moment that the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department was painstakingly searching, Samuel's car with a highly trained cadaver dog, police in the nearby city of Ontario, California, received that frantic 911 call, originating from none other than Carmen's young relative, Matthew Bell. The events that unfolded on May 29, 2011, a tranquil Sunday preceding the solemn Memorial Day holiday, brought to a gruesome culmination 4 days of escalating mystery and dread since Samuel Wiggins had first been reported missing from his Diamond Bar, California home. Last time I talked to Sam, it was about the middle of April, a friend lamented, underscoring the growing and deeply felt absence that preceded the official report. While Samuel's friends and family increasingly voiced their mounting concerns, there had been one solitary individual who steadfastly claimed to be in regular contact with the missing man, his 51-year-old girlfriend, Carmen Montelongo. She tried to give them some sort of sense that he was still alive, deliberately perpetuating a charade of normalcy to obscure her sinister actions. However, the authorities, by that afternoon, possessed compelling, irrefutable reasons to profoundly doubt that claim. The sudden, visceral experience of Matthew Bell, her cousin, served as a stark, horrifying truth. He had called 911 and reported that Carmen was actively engaged in excavating a body from his backyard. Matthew's reaction was one of absolute disbelief and horror. I was in shock at that point. I was just amazed. I thought there was nothing else I could see. And yet, with the chilling clarity of hindsight, Matthew now realized he might have seen it coming. He and his girlfriend resided in a rental house owned by Carmen's aunt, placing them in an intimate, though unwitting, proximity to her increasingly erratic and suspicious activities. For several days leading up to the gruesome discovery, Carmen had been making repeated, unsettling appearances at the property, each visit accompanied by unusual and clandestine behaviors. Carmen was coming back and forth, digging around a lot. She was digging all these big holes all over the yard. Her ostensible explanation, proffered with deceptive nonchalance, was that she had been telling people that she was going to plant a garden and re-landscape the backyard. This mundane domestic facade served as a convenient cover for her macabre endeavors. Adding to the pretense, she had like flower pots, a lot of dirt with her always. She's always busy coming at night. The nocturnal nature of her digging, coupled with the innocent pretense of gardening, painted a disquieting portrait of covert activity. And now, as Matthew recounted to the dispatcher in a voice trembling with fear and disgust, Carmen was engaged in the horrific act of unearthing what she had previously interred. "I'm burying bodies in the back, trying to get them out." The young man's description was graphic, born of immediate, horrifying observation. She's throwing body parts like 1, 2 feet away in a trash can, like just throwing parts. The image of such casual disregard for human remains, treated as mere refuse, speaks to a chilling desensitization. The physical toll on Matthew was immediate and overwhelming. All I remember is just like throwing up. The psychological impact on Matthew, his girlfriend, and his little brother, who were all unfortunate witnesses to this unfolding nightmare, was profound and immediate. They understandably did not stick around. Their flight was immediate, an instinctual retreat from the source of unspeakable horror. "Can you walk out of the house?" "I'm already up the street." Matthew urgently informed the dispatcher, highlighting the frantic pace of their escape. Yet Carmen, consumed by her desperate need, was not going to let them get away that easily. Her pursuit, both physically and psychologically relentless, continued down the street. She's following us, in a grotesque continuation of her earlier activities. She was dragging the trash can behind her down the street after Matthew, all the while continuing to ask him for his help. Her single-minded determination, devoid of any discernible shame or horror, demonstrated a chilling detachment. But Matthew's resolve, now tempered by terror, was unshakable. I was a little scared. I just wanted to get out of there. His focus was singular, escape from the terrifying proximity to his cousin's heinous secret. Carmen's attempt to escape the clutches of justice proved as clumsy and desperate as her earlier, frantic digging. When the Ontario Police Department units rolls up on her, she is almost a block and a half away from the actual house. Her attempt at subterfuge was equally inept. She parked the trash can in front of somebody's house and just started walking up the driveway into the house like she lived there. The audacious pretense of normalcy, a desperate attempt to blend in, was tragically futile. She was, however, only halfway to the house when the officer stopped the car and called her back to where the trash can sat on the sidewalk. The officer's command was firm. The cop was like, come here. Are you pulling this?" The wheeled trash can, shrouded deceptively by a sweater over the top, concealed the unspeakable horror within. Reluctantly, Carmen retreated to the curb, her composure, initially strained, now showing further signs of faltering. She was pretty calm, just like answering the questions that they asked, attempting to maintain an illusion of cooperation. But this fragile veneer of calm shattered irrevocably when the officer, guided by a grim intuition, removed the concealing garment. Moving that sweater revealed a human body. The horrifying discovery was unequivocal. His torso, guts. The immediate, profound implication was clear. They suspected that the victim was Samuel, Carmen Montelongo, apprehended red-handed with the grisly evidence of her crime, found her carefully constructed edifice of lies crumbling around her. Yet, even as she was placed under arrest, her lips sealed on any specific identification. She defiantly issued a chilling, enigmatic statement. The only thing that Carmen Montelongo would tell us was, "That's the son of a bitch that raped me." This accusation, hurled with an almost visceral conviction, would prove to be a crucial, albeit utterly false, component of her subsequent defense. Within minutes of her apprehension, Carmen Montelongo was transported to the Ontario, California police station, where the meticulous process of formal interview and interrogation was to commence. Her physical appearance reflected the chaotic, grim reality of her recent activities. "Oh, shit. Come on. I'm just taking a break. This doesn't look good." The arresting officer's candid observations speak volumes. Frankly, neither did Carmen. She still had debris, dirt and human decomposition stains on her, and there was an odor. The visual and olfactory evidence surrounding her provided a stark, irrefutable narrative of her recent horrific activities, rendering her initial protestations hollow and unbelievable. The investigators were confronted with a pressing dilemma. How did this woman, found wheeling a dismembered body down a residential street, find herself in such an appalling situation And what precisely did she intend by her cryptic, shocking comment regarding the man who had raped her? The need for an explanation was urgent, yet Carmen, with a shrewd calculation characteristic of her deceptive nature, introduced a condition. As for an explanation, Carmen appeared willing to talk on one condition. I will tell you the entire truth. I will tell you everything. Just get my lawyer here. The calculated theatricality of this declaration, promising absolute candor contingent upon legal representation, is a textbook maneuver of suspects seeking to control the narrative or by time. However, the timing proved inconvenient, given it was the start of Memorial Day weekend, a period when accessing legal counsel proved particularly challenging. I made efforts to call her attorney to try and get him there. There was never any answer. Faced with this unforeseen logistical hurdle and the exigency of the investigation, the investigator proceeded to read Carmen her Miranda rights, ensuring her constitutional protections were acknowledged. He then extended one final, crucial opportunity for her to speak voluntarily. Okay, do you want to tell me your side of the story right now? Carmen's response, curt and decisive, underscored her strategic calculation. I told you I will. See if you can get through our help. Okay, we're done. Good luck. Her defiant farewell, imbued with arrogant confidence, hinted at her belief in her own ability to control the unfolding narrative, a confidence that would later prove tragically misplaced. And considering the circumstances, Carmen would probably need all the luck she could get. The gravity of her situation was now undeniable. We charge her with first-degree murder. The charging of Carmen Montelongo with first-degree murder marked a pivotal moment, yet the path to absolute certainty remained obscured by a glaring absence: the victim's complete remains. While the investigators harbored a strong suspicion that the victim was Samuel Wiggins, it was tough to say with any certainty without the whole body. The immediate discovery, grim as it was, presented a forensic challenge. The trash can did not contain his head and his arms, so at first the police could not make an idea. The partial nature of the remains made definitive identification profoundly difficult. Consequently, even as Carmen was being interrogated at the station, a coordinated effort by the Ontario Police Department was already underway. Swarming over Carmen's aunt's house, the site of Matthew Bell's terrifying discovery, in a desperate hope of unearthing the remaining parts of the deceased. The scale of the law enforcement response reflected the horrific nature of the crime and its immediate impact on a quiet suburban neighborhood. 6 other units came, and then like 3 other helicopters came, 10 more units came, and then FBI came, and it was just really kind of crazy. Out in the backyard, amidst the chaos of multiple agencies, the investigators pinpointed the precise location where Carmen had undoubtedly exhumed the initial body parts. It was a grave that had the odor of human decomposition, an undeniable signature of death embedded in the soil. A meticulous forensic team dedicated arduous hours to systematically excavating the entire backyard, revealing a landscape of profound disturbance. They were just massive holes everywhere. Yet, despite their exhaustive efforts, the most crucial elements remained stubbornly elusive. They failed to find the rest of the body. The head and the arms were still missing. The frustrating absence of these vital components intensified the urgency of the investigation, implying that Carmen had gone to extraordinary, chilling lengths to disseminate the remains, scattering them in an attempt to frustrate identification and detection. The search, however, continued with relentless tenacity. 2 days later, on Tuesday, May 31st, the Los Angeles County investigators redirected their focus back to Samuel Wiggins' home in Diamond Bar, a crucial hub in the complex web of this macabre case. This return to Samuel's residence was markedly different from their initial visit. Previously, when Samuel's nephew, Ramon Martin, had courageously pointed out what he firmly believed to be dry blood on a hallway wall, the investigators, operating under the classification of a mere missing persons report, had regrettably, dismissed his claims. Their initial mindset was constrained by the parameters of the case. The first time they go, it's a missing persons report. It wasn't a murder investigation. So they weren't looking for essentially anything that was foul play. This initial oversight, though understandable within the procedural constraints of law enforcement, highlights the critical shift in perspective when a case transforms from a missing persons inquiry to a confirmed homicide. But now, armed with a horrifying discovery of Samuel's dismembered torso and the grim certainty that murder had occurred, the investigators returned with an entirely new lens. This time, their focus was honed, their tools precise. They revisited the site of Ramon's earlier, dismissed concern, and under the intensified scrutiny of forensic experts, they concluded, unequivocally, that the tiny smear was blood. The implications were immediate and chilling. The blood evidence revealed that the scene was very clear that scene had been cleaned. This forensic finding pointed directly to deliberate efforts at obfuscation, a desperate attempt to erase the physical evidence of the crime, yet the perpetrator had been imperfect in their macabre tidiness. Whoever had cleaned up did miss enough blood to provide some revealing clues, critical remnants that would prove instrumental in reconstructing the horrifying events that transpired. The most damning of these overlooked clues were discovered in and around Sam's bedroom. The blood spatter analysis painted a stark, visceral picture of the initial assault. In the front of his bedroom door, there's blood smeared on the top of that wall, and then there's blood splattered very close to the bottom of it. So I believe that that's where he fell. This forensic mapping, detailing the location and trajectory of the blood, suggested a violent struggle, culminating in Samuel's collapse at his bedroom threshold, perhaps as he sought refuge or escape. Further evidence, not of violence, but of abrupt cessation of life's mundane rhythms, emerged from the activity log of Samuel's personal computer. The digital footprint offered precise, if grim, timeline of his demise. Sam Wiggins likely died on or about April 26, because up until that time, every day he checked his dating website, and on April 26, 2011, he stopped doing it. This sudden, uncharacteristic cessation of a daily habit provided a chilling digital signature of the approximate moment of his death, marking the exact point when Samuel's life and his online aspirations for companionship were violently extinguished. Samuel's banking and credit card records corroborated this grim digital timeline, weaving a consistent narrative of abrupt change. Mr. Wiggins was a creature of habit. He did everything the same all the time. He would go to Walmart, he would go to Costco, he would go get gas at a certain location. These were the rhythms of a stable, predictable life, marked by routine and order. But then, precisely after April 26, that pattern changed dramatically and unequivocally. The reason for this drastic alteration was, for the investigators, all too clear. The meticulously documented financial records revealed a sinister pattern of postmortem exploitation. Carmen was, using his credit card, using his ATM card, and she had apparently used his ATM card a lot. So drawing large sums of money, $300, $500 at a time. The systematic plundering of Samuel's financial assets, occurring immediately after his disappearance and digital silence, cemented the motive, casting a chilling pall of calculated greed over the entire tragedy. The investigators now possessed the three indispensable pillars of any successful homicide: investigation, a clear, compelling motive rooted in financial exploitation, a definitively identified crime scene at Samuel's home, and critically a body, albeit incomplete. However, one final, crucial element remained outstanding: definitive identification of the remains as those of Samuel Wiggins. This gap, caused by the missing head and arms, presented a significant forensic hurdle. While the search of Samuel's house had indeed yielded a trove of compelling evidence pointing to his murder, it had conspicuously failed to turn up any more body parts. leading investigators to the inescapable conclusion that the remaining portions had been meticulously concealed somewhere else. And as it transpired, their grim suspicions were tragically correct. From the very genesis of the unfolding horror, Carmen Montelongo's arrest and the profoundly bizarre circumstances surrounding it had become a macabre sensation, dominating news reports across the vast expanse of greater Los Angeles. A woman who was found wielding a trash can containing the partial remains of a man. That's just, those kind of things don't happen. The incredulity, the sheer unprecedented nature of the act riveted the public. The community was shocked. Ontario, this neighborhood specifically, didn't see it coming. For Samuel Wiggins' close-knit circle of friends and family, the shocking news reports served not as a morbid curiosity, but as a devastating, irrefutable confirmation of their deepest, most terrifying fears. When I saw that image of her on TV, it was just horrible, a friend recounted. The visceral memory of seeing Carmen's face associated with such an atrocity is still profoundly disturbing. And, close friend from high school that are still close were calling me and asking, "Corrine, did you see it?" The shared grief and disbelief rippled through Samuel's extensive network. In an unexpected yet critical twist in the macabre saga, Carmen Montelongo's own mother saw the omnipresent news reports. Confronted with the grim reality splashed across every media outlet, she experienced a personal crisis of conscience or perhaps profound fear regarding her daughter's escalating legal predicament. On June 1st, approximately 2 days after Carmen's arrest and the initial discovery, she made the agonizing decision to contact the Ontario police with a piece of information that would prove pivotal. She told us that on Mother's Day, May 8th, some 2 weeks prior, Carmen had dropped off 2 large potted plants at some property that she owns in the city of Bell Gardens. This seemingly innocuous act, occurring weeks before the public unraveling of the crime, now took on a chilling, sinister new meaning. Acting with immediate urgency, investigators rushed to the modest home in Bell Gardens where Carmen's mother maintained ownership, and there, conspicuously positioned, the plants were still there. The image of innocent, life-giving plants serving as a macabre shroud for the dead created an unsettling juxtaposition. The subsequent forensic excavation revealed a horrifying truth. Going through the dirt, sifting through the dirt, they found decomposed body parts. The grim harvest was definitive and horrifying. We found a decapitated head and 2 arms. The missing pieces of the puzzle had been found, revealing the full extent of Carmen's meticulous and ghoulish dismemberment. The casual, almost flippant act of delivering the flower pots as gifts, knowing full well the horrific contents they concealed, underscored a level of chilling detachment and utter lack of empathy that is profoundly disturbing. To any normal human observer, it cemented the image of a cold, calculating perpetrator. The very next day, June 2nd, the meticulous work of the medical examiner's office finally provided the irrefutable, scientific confirmation that the investigators had been working towards since the initial, gruesome discovery. With the complete, albeit dismembered, remains now available for forensic analysis, we were able to identify those as belonging to Sam Wiggins. The identification, achieved through dental records and other distinguishing features, brought a somber finality to the grim saga. Samuel Wiggins, the kind, outgoing man whose life had been so unjustly extinguished, now had a name to the tragic story. Armed with the unequivocal identification, and by meticulously combining what the autopsy revealed with the blood evidence from the crime scene, the investigators were able to embark upon a harrowing but essential task of reconstruct how he died. This intricate process of forensic reconstruction, a meticulous piecing together of events from physical evidence, laid bare the terrifying sequence of Samuel's final moments, and what they meticulously uncovered only added to the already gruesome horror. The evidence suggested that the murder initiated not as a sudden, spontaneous eruption of violence, but as a premeditated ambush meticulously executed. The investigators believe that the murder started with an attack outside Sam's bedroom door. The blood spatter patterns and the location of the initial trauma were unequivocal. From the evidence we have, I believe that he was stabbed twice in the chest while he was standing in the front of his bedroom door. He grabs onto the wall, and then he falls. This account painted a picture of Samuel, taken by surprise, desperately struggling for his life, seeking support against the wall as the life drained from his body. But tragically, this was merely the genesis of Samuel's unimaginable ordeal. The subsequent injuries revealed by the autopsy paint a far more brutal, prolonged narrative of suffering. The investigators concluded, with a grim certainty, that once he was on the ground, Carmen had then fallen on her now helpless lover, lashing out in a murderous frenzy. The second phase of the attack, occurring while Samuel was incapacitated, pointed to an overwhelming, sustained burst of violence. That's when she stabs him 22 times in the back. The sheer number of stab wounds, far exceeding what would be necessary to cause death, pointed to a profound level of rage, or perhaps a terrifyingly methodical intent to inflict maximum suffering. That's overkill. This term, utilized by forensic psychologists, describes violence beyond that necessary to incapacitate or kill, often indicative of extreme emotional states, rage, hatred, or even a psychotic break. The investigators struggled to contextualize the sheer depravity. It's hard for me to imagine someone doing that to another human being. The calculated, prolonged nature of the assault underscored a chilling inhumanity. And then, once Samuel was undeniably dead, the horror morphed into a chillingly cold, methodical process of desecration. He was dismembered, and some of the parts were removed from the body by a knife. Others were sawed off. The use of multiple instruments, suggesting both a precise cutting and a more brutal severing, indicates a determined, systematic approach to the dismemberment. We don't know when he was in fact dismembered. The exact timing remains somewhat obscured, lost in the shadows of Carmen's calculated actions. But a critical timeline was established. But we do know that it was sometime before May 8th, because that's when she delivered his head and arms to Bell Gardens. The chilling finality of that date underscored the incredible deceit, transforming mundane flower pots into gifts carrying unspeakable horrors. It was just the craziest case, an investigator lamented, a testament to the profound abnormality of Carmen's actions. On August 7th, 2014, more than 3 years after the gruesome discovery, Carmen Montelongo, then 54 years of age, stood trial for murder at the San Bernardino County Courthouse. The charges were clear and chilling. The deliberate killing and subsequent dismemberment of her boyfriend, Samuel Wiggins, the 62-year-old retired aerospace worker who had vanished from his Diamond Bar, California home in April of 2011. The opening statements began to unravel the carefully constructed layers of deception and horror. Eventually, around May 25th, Samuel's relatives started realizing that Samuel was missing. The growing unease among his family and friends had reached its tragic climax 4 days later. On May 29th, when Carmen herself was apprehended, the prosecution's narrative was stark. They had found her with a trash can with my uncle's torso in it, walking down the street. The inherent peculiarity of the case riveted public attention. This was such a bizarre story. Cutting up body parts and digging holes in the ground and dragging body parts down the street. The incredulity was pervasive. I think we were all just really surprised. For Samuel's friends and family, attending the trial was a somber yet essential act of bearing witness. A desperate search for understanding amidst incomprehensible cruelty. Not that Carmen had been socializing much lately. Her world had shrunk dramatically since her immediate arrest, as she had been held in jail, unable to secure her freedom on the hefty $1 million bail. She stayed in the county jail for about 3 years, up until her trial. This lengthy period of incarceration before trial is a testament to the gravity of the charges and the robust nature of the evidence against her. The prosecutor, a tireless advocate for justice, approached the case with unwavering determination, resolute in their commitment to ensure Carmen Montelongo would remain behind bars for a very considerable duration. In their compelling opening statement, the prosecution meticulously constructed a portrait of Carmen as a cold-blooded, calculating murderer. The overarching theme of my case was Carmen Montelongo used Mr. Wiggins, that for her, he was worth more to her dead than alive, and that she would do anything to get away with this murder. This thesis illuminated Carmen's core motive, presenting her as a parasitic individual for whom human relationships were mere instruments to achieve financial gain, culminating in an ultimate act of termination once her victim was no longer useful or, worse, a threat. However, when it was a defense's turn to present their initial argument, they put forth a starkly divergent narrative, a shocking counteraccusation. The defense offered a motive that echoed Carmen's defiant outbursts at the moment of her arrest, a claim that resonated with incredulity, but sought to cast her as a victim rather than a perpetrator. Her defense attorney had started her opening statement by saying that Carmen Montelongo had been raped by the victim. This audacious claim, launched with the intent of muddying the waters and generating sympathy, immediately elicited a gasp of disbelief and outrage from Samuel's friends and neighbors present in the courtroom, where she concocted this term from, "I don't know, because that's not the person that I grew with. I've been friends for a long time. Him being a girlfriend to a woman, I've never seen it." These were the passionate, indignant responses of those who knew Samuel best, rejecting outright any insinuation that he, a man of profound decency and respect, could commit such a heinous act. The accusation was so thoroughly unsupported by Samuel's character that, as far as the seasoned prosecutors were concerned, it was so preposterous that they paid it little heed. They understood it for what it was, a desperate, unmeritorious attempt to deflect guilt and generate sympathy, typical of manipulative personalities who refuse to accept accountability. Instead, the prosecution commenced its methodical presentation of their case, opening with a meticulously compiled series of witnesses who vividly detailed how Carmen Montelongo had financially supported herself for the majority of her adult life, painting a chilling picture of serial financial exploitation. The witnesses provided a troubling pattern of behavior, hinting at activities that, while not explicitly illegal in all contexts, certainly revealed a morally ambiguous and parasitic lifestyle. One witness, in a startlingly direct assessment, claimed she was sleeping with the cops for money. The prosecution, however, clarified that Carmen wasn't technically a prostitute. Instead, they skillfully argued that she was a highly refined con artist, her preferred method a subtle, psychological form of manipulation rather than direct transactional exchange. She seduced elderly men with sex to take advantage of them financially. She had been preying on other older men that this was her M.O. She was a black widow type. The psychological profiling, drawing on classic criminal archetypes, accurately captured Carmen's predatory methodology. The term black widow, a powerful and unsettling metaphor, refers to women who kill their partners, usually for financial gain, weaving a web of charm and seduction to entrap their victims before ultimately extinguishing their lives. Although it was clarified, as far as the authorities were aware, Samuel Wiggins was the only one she killed, emphasizing the escalating danger she represented. To further buttress their case, the prosecution strategically called one of Carmen's former lovers, an elderly gentleman named Carmelo, to the witness stand. Carmelo's testimony provided crucial insight into Carmen's compartmentalized relationships and her pattern of duplicity. Carmen was seeing Carmelo at the same time she was seeing Samuel Wiggins. This concurrent romantic entanglement revealed a chilling aspect of her character, her ability to maintain multiple, mutually exclusive relationships, each serving her own interests, with each man unaware of the other's existence. Carmelo explicitly stated, the two men didn't know about one another, a critical detail that illuminated the necessity of Carmen's strict rules regarding when Samuel could visit her. Carmen would never allow Mr. Wiggins to come to her house unannounced, a boundary designed not for privacy or respect, but to meticulously manage her web of deceit and prevent any accidental convergence of her carefully separated lives. Carmelo's testimony mirrored Samuel's experience, confirming Carmen's exploitative nature. Carmelo testified in court that she took financial advantage of him as well. She was using him for his money. The pattern was undeniably consistent, painted with strokes of financial manipulation and emotional detachment. But Carmelo was not the only victim of Carmen's systematic exploitation. The prosecution then introduced the devastating case of another of her sugar daddies, a man named Jaquez, whom Carmen had systematically drained of his resources over a period spanning 2 decades. Jaquez was with Carmen for 20 years. Their relationship began when Carmen was still in her 20s and Jaquez already in his 60s, highlighting the consistent age differential in her chosen partners. According to Jaquez's anguished family, they had made repeated, desperate attempts to intervene, witnessing their beloved patriarch slowly being stripped of his dignity and his wealth. They will tell you that they tried to get in between Jaquez and Carmen for years, but they couldn't because it was about sex. They couldn't get their father away from Carmen. This tragic inability to extricate their father underscored the potent, almost addictive, hold Carmen could exert over vulnerable elderly men. By the bitter end of those 20 years, Carmen had rendered Jaquez virtually penniless. The human cost of her predatory behavior was laid bare. I talked to witnesses that said Jaquez was basically living on the street, begging neighbors for food, and Carmen Montelongo was collecting his Social Security check. This damning account showcased the profound depth of her financial parasitism, stripping her victim of every last vestige of security and leaving him to face destitution while she benefited directly from his impoverishment. What, then, ultimately differentiated Samuel Wiggins from the earlier victims of Carmen's insidious machinations, men like Jaquez and Carmelo? According to Samuel's astute friends, the crucial distinction lay in his burgeoning self-awareness and his courageous decision to confront the exploitation. From my last conversation with Sam regarding Carmen, it's that he was going to cut her loose. This realization marked a perilous turning point, as Samuel, a man of integrity, was no longer willing to tolerate the parasitic dynamic. He hadn't stopped at merely severing ties. He confided in his trusted neighbors that Carmen was stealing money from him and that he was going to report her to the police. This statement, born of righteous indignation and a desire for justice, sealed his fate. The critical question became, had Samuel communicated this intention directly to Carmen? If so, this decision to not only end their relationship, but to expose her criminal behavior would have been the ultimate provocation, a direct threat to her modus vivendi. It would have triggered a visceral, desperate reaction from Carmen, one born of pure self-preservation. I think Carmen just snapped. This succinct psychological assessment resonated deeply with the evidence presented by the prosecution. The prosecutors firmly believed that Samuel's decision to report Carmen to the authorities served as the direct catalyst for his brutal murder, leading her to the irreversible choice of eliminating the threat. Their theory was robust, backed by a significant volume of corroborating evidence. The most damning piece of evidence we had was what she did after the murder, trying to hide the body as well as her use of his ATM cards and his credit cards. The methodical dismemberment and the calculated concealment of the remains, followed by the immediate and systematic draining of Samuel's bank accounts, created an undeniable sequence of events that pointed directly to a premeditated act, driven by financial desperation and the need to silence a burgeoning threat. However, to the defense, these seemingly damning actions were merely circumstantial. And Carmen herself would, on August 20th, 2014, embark upon a daring strategy to explain away every piece of incriminating evidence. The defense commenced their segment of the trial by calling a pivotal witness, one they claimed possessed a singular ability to reinterpret the entire sequence of events and exonerate Carmen. Carmen Montelongo herself was going to take the stand. The decision for a defendant to testify in her own murder trial is always fraught with peril, a double-edged sword that can either sway a jury or irrevocably condemn the accused. And it was undeniably true. The explanation she ultimately offered for Samuel's murder, delivered from the witness box, appeared, to her mind at least, to absolve her of all culpability for the heinous crime. When Carmen Montelongo took the stand, she wanted to wash her hands of everything. According to Carmen's meticulously constructed testimony, delivered with an almost theatrical air, she was entirely innocent of Samuel's murder. Her narrative, however, stretched the boundaries of credulity to their breaking point. In a stunning, audacious move, she pinned the entire grotesque crime on another former lover, the very man she had milked of his Social Security and left destitute, the elderly Jaquez. She said that Jaquez had killed him, and what possible motive, the jury surely wondered, could the infirm, elderly Jaquez have for committing such an act of unspeakable violence against Samuel? Carmen, with calculated malice, wove her previous, unproven allegation of sexual assault into this new, fantastic tale. She said that she was raped by Samuel Wiggins and told Jaquez. She confided in him. And then she didn't see him for 2 days. And then when she went back to Mr. Wiggins' home, she discovered Mr. Wiggins already dismembered, this self-serving fabrication, painting herself as a confidant of the aged Jaquez and an accidental discoverer of a pre-existing crime was the cornerstone of her defense, and that was her story. Yet, Carmen still had to account for the irrefutable evidence of her being caught literally dragging Samuel's dismembered remains down a public street in a trash can. Her explanation for this damning circumstance was equally incredible, bordering on the absurd. She said to the jury that for the last 3 days, Los Angeles Sheriff's Department was insisting that they wanted to see Samuel Wiggins. The narrative continued, weaving an elaborate tapestry of official harassment, and they were harassing her. So she was taking the body of Samuel Wiggins to the Walnut Police Sheriff's Substation to show them where Samuel Wiggins was. This preposterous claim, delivered with a straight face and an unsettling confidence, truly strained credulity of all present. It was pretty preposterous. But that was her claim. That's what she said on the stand. I kid you not. Her demeanor during this fantastical testimony further solidified the impression of her profound narcissism and utter detachment from reality. She would smirk at you. She would give you this look of satisfaction almost. The arrogance, the misplaced confidence in her own deceit was palpable. She's just had this sort of arrogance that she knows what's going on and the rest of us have no clue. The sheer audacity of Carmen's attempt to blame the frail Jaquez for the murder carried with it one cynical, strategic advantage. Jaquez was no longer alive to refute the accusation. At the point that the trial happened, he had already passed away. His death in 2013 meant that Carmen was literally blaming it on a dead person, a tactic that spoke volumes about her manipulative genius and her utter lack of conscience. Was it conceivable? The question lingered in the minds of the jury that one former lover could have killed the other? The investigators and prosecutors, armed with the irrefutable facts, deemed it highly unlikely and utterly impossible. Jaquez was an elder gentleman about 85 or 87 years old. He was an old, feeble man not capable of that kind of crime. The physical impossibility of such an act, coupled with the profound absence of any evidence to support it, rendered Carmen's claim nothing short of grotesque fantasy. But ultimately, the weight of judgment rested with the 12 individuals forming the jury. Would they, confronted with Carmen's outrageous story and her unsettling confidence, believe it By the conclusion of her testimony, Carmen herself appeared convinced that she had made her case. Her outward demeanor, a smug confidence, betrayed her internal conviction. She looked cocky like she had it in the box. She was going to win the trial. Her self-assuredness, however, was a tragic miscalculation of the power of truth and evidence. On August 29, 2014, after 3 grueling days of intense deliberation, the jury announced that it had reached a verdict in Carmen Montelongo's murder trial. The entire courtroom held its collective breath. The 54-year-old was charged with the 2011 murder and dismemberment of her boyfriend, Samuel Wiggins. The narrative of her crime, encompassing the meticulously calculated steps she took to conceal her heinous deed, had been laid bare for the jury. To cut Samuel's body into pieces and try to hide his head and hide his arms, bury his body at a different location, all of these different steps that she took was just so strange. These actions, so far removed from any semblance of normal human behavior, formed a damning mosaic of intent and cruelty. Even stranger, even more audacious, had been Carmen's defense strategy in court, pinning the entire gruesome crime on a frail, deceased former boyfriend, despite his advanced age at the time of the murder. It was clear that things she was saying were just self-serving and not based on any of the evidence. If you believe her story, you had to disbelieve every other witness. The jury's choice, then, was not merely between 2 versions of events, but between truth and a meticulously crafted, self-serving fantasy. When the solemn verdict was finally read aloud, the pronouncement reverberated through the hushed courtroom. The jury had found Carmen Montelongo guilty of first-degree murder. The overwhelming evidence, meticulously presented by the prosecution, had decisively triumphed over her audacious fabrications. The jury never believed Carmen Montelongo. Their dismissal of her testimony was a testament to the robust body of forensic evidence and the compelling narratives presented by the prosecution. One of the jurors' primary reasons for discrediting her, cited later in discussions, was directly related to her self-serving courtroom performance. One of the things they said that was compelling was when Carmen took the stand and gave the unbelievable, ludicrous statement that she was taking the body to the police station to show the police where Samuel Wiggins was. Her own words, intended to liberate her, had ultimately bound her irrevocably to her conviction. But when it came to outrageous statements and an unwavering display of arrogant defiance, Carmen Montelongo was far from finished. Allowed to address the court at her September 29 sentencing hearing, a formal opportunity typically reserved for expressions of remorse or pleas for leniency, Carmen instead stood before the judge and, in a breathtaking display of continued delusion, began to make demands. She wanted a motion for a new trial, and she wanted to be her own attorney. These requests, both procedurally unsound and legally unrealistic given a conclusive verdict, underscored her profound disconnect from reality and her unwavering belief in her own innocence. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, the judge, with a measured solemnity appropriate to the gravity of the occasion, unequivocally denied Carmen's requests. He told Carmen that she had received a fair trial, that she even took the stand in her own defense. His final assessment of her testimony echoed the jury's decision, and her statements were preposterous. And then, in a pronouncement that brought a powerful sense of justice to proceedings, the judge sentenced her to 26 years to life in prison. For Samuel's grief-stricken friends and neighbors, who had patiently endured the grueling trial and bore witness to Carmen's chilling deception, the outcome brought a profound, if melancholic, sense of resolution. The sentence, a reflection of the enormity of her crime, provided a measure of peace. We wanted to sit on that front row and clap, but we knew it wasn't appropriate. Their restrained relief spoke volumes about the depth of their loss and their profound respect for Samuel. His legacy was one of unwavering goodness. The people that knew him loved him and cared about him. He was a good man. The neighborhood, we all miss him. his absence, a permanent void in their lives, continue to be felt with acute poignancy. And to this very day, they continue to grapple with the agonizing struggle to comprehend the inexplicable, to make sense of how such an unspeakable tragedy could have befallen a man so genuinely beloved. You're trying to make sense of it, and you can't make sense of it. The rational mind recoils from such depravity, unable to fit it into any comprehensible framework. There's nothing in this world that can tell me she was writing what she did. I've never seen the writing. I love this. The yearning for a rational explanation, for a motive that aligns with human understanding, remains elusive, for Carmen Montelongo's actions existed on a plane of cold, calculated cruelty that defied all logic and empathy. This harrowing narrative stands as a potent lesson, a stark reminder of the often hidden dangers of manipulative personalities and the profound vulnerability of genuine human desire for connection. Samuel Wiggins, a good man seeking companionship in his golden years, became prey to a callous predator who viewed human relationships purely through the lens of financial gain. His story illuminates the educational value of vigilance, encouraging a healthy skepticism even in the face of apparent charm, particularly when financial entanglements begin to outweigh emotional sincerity. It underscores the critical importance of strong community ties, where watchful neighbors and attentive friends can serve as an early warning system against unseen threats. The unwavering efforts of the investigative forces, the persistent nephew, the astute neighbors, the diligent police, the precise cadaver dogs, and the tireless forensic teams honor justice and demonstrate a profound humanistic meaning in pursuing truth, no matter how dark or disturbing. Their collective resolve ensured that Samuel Wiggins, though cruelly murdered, was ultimately afforded the dignity of justice, and his killer brought to account. In the end, despite the initial horror and the audacious deceit, the triumph of good over evil, of truth over fabrication, stands as an enduring inspiration, proving that even in the face of the most unimaginable darkness, the light of justice can and will prevail. The community's ongoing grief is a testament to the profound loss of a good man, but their shared resolve in the ultimate verdict affirm that Carmen Montelongo's predatory machinations and her chilling indifference to human life could not ultimately escape the long, unyielding arm of the law.